Greetings and welcome to another Abe Nudge. And this is hot off the press, as they say. Today is the 4th of April, and I'm going to give some nudges that came through literally just over an hour ago. This morning, I was speaking to my friend Nicola, who I call the Abe lady, and I asked her, has Abe given any nudges about the upcoming solar eclipse, which will be next Monday, the 8th of April, which many people are chattering about online with all sorts of stuff? And Nicola replied, no, I haven't got anything. And then there was a pause, and then I could see she was typing. We were messaging each other. And then, of course, a nudge came through because she had tuned in at that point. And so we received a nudge specifically about the subject of the solar eclipse. And then as a matter of clarification, I followed up with several questions, which I thought were questions that may wish to be asked in relation to this message. And I have the responses, which I've just formatted. So I'm going to go through them now. So straight to it. So the first short nudge that came through in response to, a kind of unspoken question about the eclipse was this. You see, and what may be of focus of now is in some way you may be looking at this so-called darkness to change. You are awaiting this shift in the darkness to again become light. But you see, sometimes, albeit the darkness being one of panic and seemingly overcoming the light, this will indeed allow more lights to be turned on, you see? So rather than the focus on the dark to become light again or change, you turn on your own. And this is where the focus must be. Not fumbling in the dark, trying to see, for there is no need. If anything, allow this to be an outer reflection of what need to be from you, not from other. It is a setting point, not a determination. So that was the first message. And it's interesting, they say, it's as if we are awaiting the shift in the darkness to become light. We're awaiting something to come from the eclipse. And yes, sometimes the darkness can be panic and that, but actually it can function to allow more lights to be turned on. But rather than the focus being on the dark, on the eclipse, and we're waiting for some change, Abe says, just turn on your own. That's where the focus must be, turning on our own light, not waiting for something to be turned on from some event external to us. And, it needs to be from you, not from the other. Again, bringing it back home to ourselves. So I followed on that with a question. Again, questions I thought maybe wish to be asked. And this question says, does the April the 8th eclipse represent a symbolic or important time event? Will this eclipse activate, begin, or end anything in our timeline? And the answer was this. See it always an activation setting point. With any such event, the energy is there to either, like we just said, be a setting point, not a determination, you see. These events, as you do so call them, are never not there. The energy is never not there. It is the growth. It is the relational value, you see. And hear this, for it is but important. You may have a physical representation come up. Some, as we say, may stare or have been staring far too long for the dark to become light. It is a frivolous pursuit. How long shall you wait? A day, week, months, years for such a change? Or is it allowing yourselves to guide yourself through the dark, however hard that may be? For you see, you can take it as so or leave it. And although a many would like you to say this is but the point in which timelines shift, it is down to you and your relational value too. You can allow yourselves. See, again, it is a setting point, not a determination. I do so hope that this is clear now. So here it's saying that, um, you know, it's a setting point, an activation setting point. These eclipses are never, they don't call them a determination. They're just parts of a process, never something so fixed or end point. But they said, these events, as we so call them, we tend to box things into events. This event on this day, this event on that day. And Abe said, which I think is an important point, that these things are never not there. The energy is never not there. So we tend to like wait for an event to bring the energy, but that energy is always there. It's part of our growth. It's relational value. And Abe talks about this a lot. It's how we relate to it. The value is how we relate to it. If we don't relate to something, we can't allow it. So it has no value for us. So it's our relational positioning that gives value. And Abe says that, this physical representation, which is the eclipse, many of us may be staring for far too long for the dark to become light, as though we're waiting again for this event to bring some change, some illumination. And Abe says, a kind of like tongue in cheek, well, how long shall you wait? A day, week, months, years for the change? It's like we're putting all this expectation, all this power outside of us, expecting the event to do something for us. Where Abe says, you can be allowing yourselves to guide yourself through the darkness. It may be hard, but you can do that. You can be your own guide through the darkness all the time, not waiting for some event to kind of, start you. And Abe says again, kind of like tongue in cheek, many will say this is a point when timelines shift, which is again, quite a common phraseology. But Abe said, but it's down to you, your relational value. You're always shifting. You're always shifting if you are in relationship to that growth and that change. It's not stop, start in relationship to external events. So the next question I asked was a kind of clarification. The question I asked was this. So we can consider the eclipse as a resetting point, as if a nudge to give an activation to get aligned toward the light of the human pathway. We understand that energy is always there, yet sometimes humanity needs a physical event as an activation nudge to reset our energetic orientation. Is this so here? And Abe replied, it is so, is it not? For in the day-to-day of human existence, it is there that the magic lie waiting for you to grow more aware. And this is not something you strive for. It is something you allow. You are already it. It is but part and parcel of your human experience. We have the advantage to not have to juggle so many other constrictions on this. But you see, there is beauty in that also, albeit it being difficult to see sometimes. It is blacked out, if you will. Allow that to find your own light, to step relate. For then indeed you are able to see what you are from a different perspective. That is a gift, you see. The nudge, as you say, does come in many a form. The point is, are you willing to listen? And then they gave a pause And then they kind of gave a further clarification. But hear this, do not feel that anyone, any energy, any point has an advantage over the way in which you light, which way you relate. For you see, we say what is an advantage can also be a disadvantage also. It is but two sides of the same coin. This here that comes through will only be an advantage if you do so allow yourselves, you see. You do not need to be told. Sometimes it is that reminder, that nudge, if you will. So A begins by saying, but our day-to-day human existence, that's where the magic lies waiting for us. It's there all the time. It doesn't have to be something we strive for, like it's out there, we're waiting for an event, we're going towards that. It's something we allow because we're already it. It's just that we are restraining ourselves. We're not allowing our own growth if we're pinpointing it onto particular external events or times or points. We are already it, says Abe. It's part and parcel of the human experience. And there's beauty in that, but sometimes it's blacked out. A bit of a metaphor of the solar eclipse blacking out the light. It's sometimes blacked out, but we can allow our own light. And then we relate. We relate to our own light, and that helps us to make the next step. We relate, relate. Everything we allows us to keep on moving. And then we can see things from a different perspective. So, and Abe says that, no point or energy has an advantage over our own light. But we can be at a disadvantage because everything has two sides of the same coin. If we are in fear, for example, or we have been listening to the fear mongers over the solar eclipse will bring, some darkness will begin, then we've lost out on our own light. And so we don't need to be told about our light, but sometimes we need to be nudged because it's always there, but perhaps we're not recognizing it and therefore not relating to it. And then I gave a final question of clarification. The question was this: are you saying that those people who allow themselves to take advantage of this moment will receive some activation or positive shift? And that the people who fall into the dark mode and fear will have their fear increased? So that whatever state or mode a person is in during the eclipse will be amplified to their respective state. And Abe replied, not so much amplified. One would say a nudge, maybe a seeing, a little glimmer that wasn't there before. It is not necessarily what you are in direct relation to, but more importantly, that which you allow. For you see, you may be at a point of total receptivity, but not really allow much at all. And although this sounds counterintuitive, it is so. We are stating it is indeed an activation setting point, not a determination, you see. So I think the sense there is like, it's not so much like giving us more, amplifying, but just kind of resetting us. And, so we can allow more. And that nudge or resetting, allows us a different perspective, allows maybe us to recognize a glimmer that wasn't there before. And so we need to be kind of nudged to see ourselves that we're already related to the light. We're already on that pathway. It's just that perhaps by giving ourselves away to external events or external information or external guidance, we're missing that light, and we are putting ourselves onto moments. It's not determination points, not specific, stagnant, closed moments. Abe says these are setting points. We reset ourselves. We need a nudge to re-see what is already there, to relate, but in that relation, allow the connection, allow the interconnection. And then, we're being kind of shielded from ourselves. So again, don't put all our waiting time. It's like ABE saying we're in the waiting room of life and we're just saying, well, we'll wait for the next event, the next timeline shift, and then that'll kind of take to the next stage. Again, that kind of gives a stop-start perspective of life. And ABE saying, no, it's always in flow. It's just that we're blocking it. And we know we have our own light to guide us through the darkness. We just that sometimes these setting points need to nudge us to see what we already are. And hopefully these setting points will nudge us into allowing greater light. And so we move into that frequency and we'll forget all this fear mongering and leave that to its own frequency. So there's the messages from Abe in relation to this upcoming eclipse. But as Abe says, the magic's there all the time. The energy's there all the time. We just have to relate to it and allow it. Okay, thanks for that. As always, be well and stay healthy and be grounded. Till next time. Cheers.